It is funny though. I was making this observation is, Justin Trudeau resigns. Joe Biden basically, he resigned, stepped down. What's her name? Jacinda Ardern, whatever her name was, in New Zealand. She resigned. We had Cuomo who resigned in New York. A whole bunch of these characters that were telling us what to do resigned. And then when you look back at CNN, which was the main station during all that time, and how much they've restructured since then, and who got let go, because Chris Cuomo got let go, and Don Lemon got let go, and all these.
Chris Cuomo's kind of like rebranding, and I see the other types of shows he's getting on, and I see himself trying, like he's on like PBD, he's getting on these other shows, and I'm like,
I'm not buying it.
I think he's just trying to worm his way back into the limelight. I think he's just trying to like shape shift his way. He's just saying whatever he needs to say to be relevant again.
He's a professional newsman, okay? He gets his check from saying what's on the cards, okay? Just like Ron Burgundy. And if he's getting paid to say, middle of the road stuff so he can reach both right now, both sides of the argument, he's going to do that.
It reminds me of someone else, doesn't it, Brad? Someone who recently may have blocked you, someone you may have recently triggered. I mean, I may have triggered her as well, but I did not get a block yet.
She didn't block you? She blocked me.
No.
Well, I put her on the spot because I was hounding her. I was reading her posts, and I was...
That's interesting, because she is responding, but selectively to, questions or statements that she can easily give like a short answer, or I mean, she's answering with really answering to the important questions that some of us are asking. So it all started 3 days ago, because everyone's like, wow, Whitney, you're so based, you're so red, but wow, you're such a hero, wow, you're on CNN, you're really telling it like it is, you're really sticking it to him, you're really roasting him hard. And I'm going, first of all, these are very milk toast, run of the mill, very safe things to be saying, and especially in 2025. And then I go, wait a minute, where was she like the whole pandemic, the whole lockdown? Everyone's like, well, Chrissy, people are allowed to change their minds, don't you want everybody to come around? The pendulum is swinging back. Isn't this what you want? Like, and I'm like, no. She put no skin in the game. She put no balls on the line. She lost no work. She kept quiet. She promoted the vaccine. I don't know if she got it herself. It really doesn't matter.
Oh, she must have, but yes, it doesn't matter. But
she everywhere she performed, and she's like, well, I performed at a few venues. I performed outdoors for a short time, and I'm like, I bet that was in 2020 before when everything was still shut down, like we all were doing. We all had a time where we were performing outdoors, like in diner parking lots, in backyards and shit like that. So it's like, you don't get any points from me for that shit. And as soon as you could get back into the clubs, as soon as the vaccine was out, so that was like early 21, she's promoting it. She has all these tweets where she's like, get the vaccine, get the vaccine. I'm like, wow, you're not... It looks like you're pushing the vaccine. Okay. And so here I tweeted this out, like, hey, Whitney, where were you? Like in 21 and 22, did you say anything about your fans being forced to get vaxxed to see you perform? Did you do a single venue and take a stand against? Did you switch a venue? Did you take a stand against it? Do you regret it now? Glad you got management approval finally in 2025 to give the safest of takes on CNN. Groundbreaking. And then you respond with this, which I think is so apt. I predict 2025 will be the year of the freedom opportunist, where all of a sudden new influencers and advocates who sat quietly in the background the last few years and others suffered the consequences begin to finally step forward and speak out now that it's easier and safe, as the dirty work has already been done for them. I welcome new voices, as any growing movement can expect it, but I personally remain suspicious of any Johnny come lately at this point. And and people go, oh, people are allowed to change their mind. And I just, it's not like we're talking about somebody who's like in their 20s, like dumb, still brainwashed from college, right? I'm like, me and her are like about the same age. I just figure like we had access to the same Alex Jones, we had access to the same internet, the same knowledge of history, and the same, like, I feel like what is basic common sense, because we've
Yeah.
all grown up getting a certain kind of vaccine, and now things are very different. And I just, how are some people able to put it together, and some people,
Yeah.
there's like a couple of camps. There's like the genuinely confused, and then there's people who are forced into it for their jobs. And I don't shame those people for one moment, because they were put in a horrible position. But I do not appreciate the people who were gung ho, promoting it every step of the way, shaming people who aren't getting it, and
Yeah.
then performing at venues where they force it. And then she goes and says, she's responding like, "Oh, well, comedians, we didn't have control over what the venues wanted to do. It wasn't our idea." And it's like, bullshit, dude. You could have performed elsewhere, and you had the clout. You're a household name, Whitney. You could have said to these venues, like, "We're not doing this."
Yeah, I think anybody in entertainment had an enormous responsibility during that time to set an example. And I was reading her comments because I love that meme. But yeah, I mean, I've seen it in music. People that come around later, and all of a sudden they're like the new based musician or something like that. And that's my initial knee-jerk reaction is, where were you all this time? And the litmus test is, where do you stand now on these things? And that's what I asked Whitney. I didn't really ask her. In fairness, I was reading her comments, and she was saying that over and over again, like, I didn't have control over the venues. And I'm like, yes, you do have control. I shared a little clip of, it was about the Beatles performing in 1964.
Yes.
And it was that the Beatles were supposed to play a segregated show for white audiences only. And John Lennon famously said, "I would sooner lose our engagement fee than play segregated shows. We haven't, and we're not going to start now." And that's the power that I'm showing. Like, if the Beatles can do that in 1964, I feel like Whitney Cummings can do that in 2020, and not use the scapegoat of the venue of, there's nothing I can do about it as the venue. There's everything you can do about it. You're the one making the venue the money. You say, these are my requirements. I'm not requiring it. I didn't play any vaccinated only shows during that time. I know plenty of musicians who, when all the venues closed, they took it to the streets to play on the streets for free for anybody who would want to come. And they started busking or doing live events at parks and stuff. There was plenty that you could do, but you chose to play it safe, and you chose to comply. And what really irked me about this was that what she's saying here is that she would do it again. She's not coming around saying, like, I know it was is a messed up time. I was confused. I had engagements, and she's not saying that it was a little silly of me to do that. I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. She's not saying that at all. She's saying, look, my hands were tied. It was the venue. What could I do? I don't know, but I haven't learned anything. That's basically what she's saying. She hasn't learned anything. And that's where, that's why I kept poking at her, because if you're going to come around and say all these things, that people like you and I have been saying for 4 years straight, and all of a sudden get all this recognition for being based and aware of things, that's fine. But that's the litmus test is, okay, tell us your view on COVID now. Because if you can't go back to that point and say, look, that was dumb. I've done that with every single celebrity that I've reached out to, starting with Piers Morgan, when he went hard on anti-vax people, call them all sorts of names. And then one day he turns around and he goes, oh, it's so great to get the masks off and do this and that. And I was like, are you going to apologize now for calling anti-maskers this and that? And then he blocked me, right? Which that tells me, right? That tells you right there that they're not interested in the truth. They're just trying to walk back for their own sake, their own safety's sake, their own image and their own job security, and it's not real.
Mm-hmm. And it's like Whitney, there were people putting their asses on the line. I mean, you know who Jim Brewer is. He took that stance. Eric Clapton, certainly in the music world, household name, who took that stance. Like, if she doesn't know who you are, she doesn't know who I am. It's like, you certainly know who those guys are. And you see people risking work to do the right thing. And it's just why would you force any of your fans to do this? Because that's what you're doing. You're forcing your fans to make that choice, because it was restaurants and it was show venues, basically, right? And I found that there was this one fan of hers that said, "Oh, I was on the fence, but then I saw my boyfriend got me tickets to see you, Whitney, so I went ahead and got jabbed." And then people were saying, "Oh, like, that's not a real person." But I looked her up, and she is a real person. Here is Whitney Cummings. I wasn't sure about the vaccine. It scared me, but the venue my boyfriend got tickets for like 2 years ago for my birthday said it requires proof of vax. So I went and got it just for her. And here's where I said, I may not be rich and famous or sell out theaters, but this is the exact reason I stood up against the mandates. Because I got shit when I stood up against the mandates. I got people saying, "Who are you? What you're not even passed at every club. What are you even losing?" Like talking down to me, like, "You ain't shit. Like, you're not big and famous. It doesn't matter." It's like, no, integrity matters. And I did it thinking other people would be like, "Yeah, this is the right thing to do. And if enough of us do it, we can affect change." And then I have, I hear some people saying, "Well, what good did it do? You and a few of these comics stood up and refused to perform. Like, did it actually make a difference?" Yes, it did. We would have had a vaccine passport right now. If I'm not saying it's all because of me and you, but everyone in their own way, in their own different, industry, fighting back against this is why we don't have a friggin' vaccine app on our phone right now.
Yeah, because it was a lonely time when you made that decision to speak out at first. Like, anybody that made the move to start speaking out, you felt very alone at first. And then you quickly, what that time did was let others know that they weren't alone. That's what happened with me and my music was, I released one song at the time to kind of vent and say something. And it was kind of scary because I hadn't said this stuff in my music before. And then people were finding it, saying, "Thank you so much for saying these things in your music." That let me know I wasn't alone. So like, you standing up and all these other entertainers that used their platform to stand up, it sent a signal out for others to stand up in their own way, whether they were a teacher or a doctor. Everybody in every community, could stand up in their own way. And that's what it did. And like, all these people, these artists that did do vaccinated only shows, comedians and bands and stuff, they did it in the name of caring, right? It was about care. We want to get back to the stage. We care about you and get the shot. But every single one of them, have you gone back and asked how many of you that came out to see me, that got a shot to come see me, have had an adverse reaction to it? How many of you are injured now? Adele was one that was like, "I'm not doing any shows and, vaccinated. I'm only doing She was going to do vaccinated only audiences for her Las Vegas thing. Then her crew got COVID, and then she got COVID or something like that. And it's like, when do you come back around and say, "Look, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry I put that on my fans"? I would never do that. I would never expect anybody to inject something to come watch me sing a song or to tell a joke, or to see a movie or whatever it may be. It's crossing a line, especially when these environments are supposed to be so unifying. To go to a comedy show, it's like you're supposed to just go and laugh with strangers and then go home, or you go to a concert, sing along together and go home. But it became so divisive. It became the opposite of what I think, entertainment is supposed to do.
Yeah. And then have comics like Whitney. And again, I have nothing against her personally.
Mm-hmm.
She's great. She's beautiful, successful, but she'll say things like, we're the front line of defense against speaking truth to power. It's the comic's job to be edgy and buck authority. And it's like, you went along with authority every lockstep of the way on that issue. And that's the thing. It's like, I'm not being it's not like I'm being a hard ass just to be a hard ass. Like, I could never forgive anybody who took the jab or who promoted it. Like I know people were confused. People got psyoped. People were, I don't know, not being free.
It's your actions.
But
it's your actions.
But say you're sorry. Yes. Say, man, I was so stupid. I can't believe I trust what I was hearing on the mainstream media. I can't believe I didn't, push up against my agents and managers. I could have made a difference, and I was scared too, because I didn't want to lose money. I didn't want to lose gigs. I didn't want to lose my standing in Hollywood. I didn't want to get unbooked from these clubs. Like, be honest.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with like Chris Cuomo. When you're asking me about him, like, he shows up all of a sudden, he's on, what is it, Newsmax now or something? And and then he had that debate on the PBD podcast, and he could not say that he was wrong about anything that he said during COVID. And that's the point, it's like, if you can't have the humility to say, you're more than welcome to come back around and say, Joe Biden's old, they should have kicked him out. Like, oh, that's edgy now, right? Or CNN's viewership is down. That's funny. But like, go ahead and tell those jokes. That's great. But that's the litmus test for me, at least, is, okay, now call out Big Pharma and how ridiculous all that time was. Because the reason why that time period is so important is because it affected every single person in the entire world. And I hate the idea that we're going into 2025 with not a single person held accountable. And that generally people's mindset is, well, it was a few years ago, so we've got to move on from it.
It's like, no. We can't go into this next pandemic without clearing up.
I know, because they're already doing that. We've got a pandemic on the horizon.
We can't move on to the next pandemic until we clean up the mistakes of the previous pandemic. Here's a clip of Chris Cuomo getting owned on PBD podcast with Dave Smith here.
There was so much talk that they don't want you to take ivermectin. Ivermectin is the way to go. Take it. Joe Rogan got better from ivermectin. And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like it. You did it. No. Okay, yes, you did. Find the clips. Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan. You said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it. I'll go find the clip. First of all, you just saw the clips. I'm not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But no. The clip I'm talking about wasn't on there. And it's absolutely there. Here, do we have it? Hold on. Let's play the clip.
Who is it? The speed at which they got this.
Drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh, my God. What person? You talk about cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's what it is.
They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now. Chris, you can't apologize for that. You weren't being clear that it was this, and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man. I'm not. You were talking about ivermectin, the drug. You were not talking about this version of ivermectin. Come on.
That's perfect.
Wow. Isn't that insane though? Like, I was telling you earlier, like, we can have these events. They're all documented. All the receipts are there for these rallies and protests. And then even the people that delivered the propaganda and can see it in front of their face, like Chris Cuomo, the things that he said verbatim, it's all right there. We can pull up the clip like that. And he still is like, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean it that way.
I meant this other thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that's where we're at. I don't know how we move forward until people just like, that's the thing. I feel like if you really honed in on COVID, everything else would unravel from there. All the corruption that you want, who the bad guys are, it all unravels from COVID. And we have to focus on COVID because think about just the first 5 days of January 2025 and all the crap that's already been laid on us in the last few days. Couple of terrorist attacks and bird flu, quademic is on the horizon, and there's never any answers. And so, who remembers Chinese weather spy balloons? At this point,
right?
And we don't remember, we don't question, we never got any answers out of it. And then we just
all
move
about on. Lizzo losing weight too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What's she look like these days?
I don't know. She's probably melted down to an Ozempic puddle.
She's on I was gonna say Ozempic's the hot thing right now.
You know what? There's a lot of accounts of forever diarrhea with people that are having Ozempic. A lot of celebrity diarrhea. In fact, it was Gwyneth Paltrow, one of her, I think, journalist friends, was over her house. This was all over the tabloids. They got Ozempic diarrhea at Gwen's house, and she told everybody. She told Oprah. She told.
That's the secret to Ozempic, is it gives you bad diarrhea, and that's how you lose all the weight.
That's a side effect. That's not like what.
No, that's what it is.
Loss.
It's just a big old diarrhea drug, and just unload 10 pounds here, and then you're like, hey, look at all the weight I lost.
Yeah, this guy shit on Gwyneth Paltrow's bed. That's what it was in the Hamptons. God. Thank you, Courtney.
I didn't hear that story. Wow. See, there's so much good news out there. That's important stuff.
Yeah. And it's like, we're not gonna, right? We expect I guess apologies and accountability from the mainstream media, but it's like they're still in charge of it, and they're kind of just they don't want to admit to being wrong, because then it's like, what else were they wrong about? And then they can't continue to be knowingly wrong on things. And it's like, well, we did that because of all of our, big pharma sponsors, and that's commercial.
Look, the big pharma companies were paying for our show. There's nothing we could do about it. Like it's the old Cummings excuse.
Yeah. Ugh. And again, I do not hate. And then the comments like, you're just jealous because you're nobody, and she's famous and getting work. It's like, no, I'm not jealous of her. I'm doing great. I'm very happy in my life.
But you have your soul. That's the difference.
Yeah. I didn't give anybody myocarditis. I didn't, give anybody a friggin' blood clot.
Well, that's the thing, like I was saying, that you went through that time without putting that pressure on anybody who is following you or coming out to one of your shows. And that, whether she thinks about that or anybody, any entertainer from that time thinks about it, that is the truth. If you required that of your audience to see you, the Foo Fighters were a big example. They did Vax only. Bruce Springsteen was one. They have an obligation to know how many people they harmed through that requirement, through that mandate to watch them perform. And I'm not seeing it. I saw a huge amount of hypocrisy with Neil Young, who, speaking of Joe Rogan, famously drew the line in the sand with Spotify. And he was like, you can either have Joe Rogan or you can have Neil Young. And then
are you?
Nobody chose Neil Young. And then what was so funny about that story, though, is like a year later, Joe Rogan's contract, doubled in size or quadrupled, and he got all, more money to be on more platforms. And Neil Young where's his statement going to the other platforms? If he really cared that much about all this dangerous misinformation that was on Joe Rogan's Spotify podcast, why does he not care about Joe Rogan on Apple Music or YouTube? Why doesn't he take his music down from there? And of course, he doesn't.
Good point.
Yeah. And so, I follow this stuff closely because these people were my heroes at one point, and I've had to let go of all of that. My heroes now are all the people who stood up, all the friends I've made through the last few years who really, we've all been through something together. So, it's just interesting to observe the hypocrisy over and over again. But on the plus side of that, I think that old Hollywood and woke comedy and stuff is all dying away, maybe not as fast as we'd like it to, but I think that there's a new era of entertainment brewing from this time. It's like one of the silver linings, that's happening. There's a lot of great podcasts, out now, and media companies on the rise, and other musicians and stuff. So that's exciting.
It is. Yeah. And it's interesting to see like who is, authentic in their beliefs and who's just trying to save face as we move into this new like Trump era. And we have Jim Gaffigan, regrets Trump supporters thinking he was attacking them. They will saying they will never forgive me. I hosted for him once a million years ago. He recently weighed in on his previous anti-Trump social media post. And it's like, okay, is your agent just telling you to put this out here? Or do you actually feel this way? It's hard for me to believe that this is authentic. Saying he regrets that supporters of Trump took his criticism personally. How else are you to take? Gaffigan played he played Tim Walz on SNL. I regret that people think I was criticizing the people that support Trump, and that was never the intention. I regret someone said like, now I can't follow you anymore, and I kind of said F you to them. Yeah, that sounds like how is that a joke? You're telling somebody F off.
Yeah, I was just kidding. That's funny. No, that's like that Saturday Night Live skit from a few weeks ago I saw pop up where they were like, it was like right after the election, and the cast of Saturday Night Live was like, we have a message for Donald Trump. We always liked you. And it was, that was the punchline of the whole thing. And now Gaffigan is like the living example of it. It's like, I was just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm a comedian. You get it? That's my out.
Yeah. And this was, they mentioned his tweets. Gaffigan lashed out at Trump in a series of tweets in 2020. And when he wrote, look, Trumpers, I get it. As a kid, I was a Cubs fan, and I know you stick by your team no matter what, but he's a traitor and a con man who doesn't care about you. Deep down, you know it. I'm sure you enjoy pissing people off, but Trump is a liar and a criminal. In another, he bashed Trump for his handling of COVID, saying, Trump just creates enemies. You can't trust him. He's been incompetent during this crisis. You all know those people didn't need to die. Trump talks about the space program, and you can't safely go to a movie. Wake up. 4 years later, Gaffigan told the outlet his regrets about how the posts were, how they were taken. It's like you're triple, quadrupling down. Wow.
He might as well have like written, like he could have posted something like, Trump is Hitler. This is not a joke. I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, nah, I was just joking. Like he called him like when you call somebody a traitor. Now, I'm not a comedian. I don't know where the joke is there,
Yeah, that sounds like your actual feelings. Gaffigan went on acknowledging that alienating people in such a way is just part of being a comedian. But also something I've noticed in doing stand-up for so long is you're going to lose people. You're also going to attract people, but there are going to be people who are like, I don't have kids. I think he's funny, but I don't get this. You can't have it both ways, Gaffigan. Like, did your feelings change on Trump overnight, or you're just like, oh shit, I don't want to lose 50% of a potential audience?
Yeah. Like I still don't get the joke. It's like he's a traitor. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
He's literally Hitler.
Yeah. And like comedians, you are allowed. I mean, I give my actual feelings all the times that aren't in the form of jokes. But like, I would never turn around and be like, that was a joke.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, once again, that is somebody who made certain statements and they're all right there, well documented online, and then they just can't face what they have said. And this goes across the board. That's the problem too with the last 4 years. It's like we all have those personal relationships where friends and family were calling you a murderer or dangerous, selfish, murder or whatever it was, all the names, conspiracy theorists. But like, it brought out the worst in people. And Trump does that too, brings out like the absolute worst in people. And nobody wants to look at that version of themselves in hindsight and look at themselves in the mirror and go, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said those things. They all
be like, I had TDS. Like if it's bringing out such a rage in you, like you got to examine that as a person.
Right. Yeah. Because like that's what Gaffigan should say here, right? He should be like, he was really like bothering me at the time, like everybody else. And I was ranting and, but I've changed my tune a little bit, he's not such a bad guy or whatever,
Right. Because it's not like you get fired up like that about every president. It's not, you're just like, man, I hate presidents. It's no, specifically for Trump.
Yeah.
You said these things.
Mm-hmm.
Fealty. Whitney is a famous multimillionaire. She didn't financially need the shows. She could have easily chosen unmandated shows and made her money. Her change is a lie. It seems that way. Look at this. Just further proof of where our girl was at mentally between 2020 and 2022. This is from 2020. Bricksuit tweeted this out. Last night, Whitney Cummings, while guest hosting for Jimmy Kimmel, tried to roast me for not wearing a mask. I never wore a mask at Trump rally Tulsa, stood with thousands and shook hands with hundreds. Closest I came to catching anything was the glass that POTUS tossed.
Anyway, have you ever just wanted to drive your car straight into a wall? My guess is he only bought this expensive suit because he was told Mexico would pay for it. Why don't guys just wear masks? What is it helps you. It actually helps you get chicks. Put on a mask. There is a strong chance we'll flirt with you just because we'll think you're a surgeon. It's like seeing a girl in a Hooters shirt, okay? She probably works there. And even if she doesn't, that girl is a party.
Wow.
Could she just be saying that? Maybe.
It's just a joke.
Let's see. What else? Is there further proof? Oh, there is. This is from August 9th, 2021. I refuse to not make this mask mandate fun. And she's retweeting. I watched Whitney Cummings last night at the Mirage. Great show, Whitney. So much laughter. She started her show by personally handing out fun masks to members of the
wow,
audience.
what a rebel. She's so based.
What a badass. Here, I am handing you a mask.
But they're funny masks.
Wow. Ugh.
You see, they're funny. So it was a joke.
Right. It's not a regular vaccine. It's a funny vaccine.
She wasn't complying with ridiculous government rules that made no sense.
Yeah. She's based, guys. She's red pilled.
She's so based. Because did you see the 60 seconds of her on CNN? She's such a rebel.
You can tell by how she read the jokes off the teleprompter that she really meant that.
I know. That's what's kind of disappointing, though, is like I really want people to think about these things moving into 2025. Is like when you see somebody come out of nowhere now and start saying things you haven't heard them say
the whole time. Mm-hmm.
The whole time, you have every right to question their integrity because you just do.
Yeah, that was a whole year after the pandemic, and she was still giving out masks. Yuck.
Oh wow, that was a whole year. Wow.
And here is a schedule of this is from May 2021. See Whitney Cummings live in Houston with her 2021 comedy tour. Get tickets at the Improv, texttx.com Houston before she sells out. We have temperature checks, masks, private tables, and more.
She saved so many lives, though. And
Wow.
that was the funny thing, too. If you're in the middle of what you believe to be a pandemic and so many people are around the world dying, why even risk it?
Right. Why even get these people together?
Why even do it if it's so dangerous that you have to have temperature checks and masks and tables spaced apart by 6 feet?
Yeah. You know, what if someone has it and they're just not showing it yet, and they stand up and the droplets travel through the air to someone who's sitting down, you know?
Yep. It's a super spreader.
Yeah.
Nobody even talks about that. Like how super spreaders were nothing. Like the whole time that term was being floated around, it was funny because like all these worldwide rallies were happening all around in different countries of thousands and thousands of people gathering in the streets to protest these things. And I'm like, well, certainly, sarcastically saying like, these are super spreader events that are going to drop the bomb on the rest of the world. And nothing ever happened, but still that stuff doesn't click over into the brains of the common.
Yeah. It just bothers me. It's like, you got to have your cake and eat it too. You got to make all your money. You got to stay quiet. You bent the knee and you profited from it socially, financially.
Why didn't we do that?
Why we were idiots, Brad, to just like turn
Stupid
down
idiot.
work, have scruples. It doesn't pay to have scruples.
I could have made like 5 Pfizer commercials by now. And then today came around and been like, guys, CNN's ratings are bad. Isn't that funny? I'm based. And people would be like, look at this guy. Look at this guy over here. He's a rebel.
And then she goes and says, and again, she goes, oh, well, both my parents died and I had a kid. What? I understand having a kid can change you, but like that, it doesn't compute. It just doesn't compute with all that.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah. See, those are questions that I would poke and prod at. I would say,
like, how? Why?
How? And with your baby, what's the conversation on, if the vaccine's there with your child? Are you questioning them now?
Right.
Are you going down motherly rabbit holes and maybe you're concerned about what they'll do?
If the excuse is having a kid changed me and I didn't give my kid a single vaccine, then now I'm listening, Whitney. But if you're like, well, I had a kid and guess what? I gave that kid the 75, required vaccines that are on the schedule, then that's not an excuse. Matthew Hammond, Chrissy's next album, Where Were You 4 Years Ago?
I like it.
It's a great title. Christmas loving engineer. Thank you for the super chat. COVID doesn't spread only if you're in a mostly if you're in a mostly peaceful protest.
Oh, right. It's all on the vibes. Yeah. COVID attacks based on vibes.
The vibes have to be a certain way.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Wow. Thank you to this I believe I did tweet out. This is from the Vic Theater in Chicago. This was her Touch Me tour. Please review our vaccine policy and mask mandate before arriving. Wow, how brave, how stunning. December 11th, 2021.
That's important. If you want to hear my jokes, listen, there's some rules. Review our vaccine policy and mask mandate.
Fight the power, guys.
Yeah. I saw an interesting video of that came up through my feed of babies reacting to their dads who shaved their beards. And the kids were all like scared because they were like, where's my daddy? And so, because, I don't know if you had a mustache dad growing up, but I did in the 80s. And when your dad shaved his mustache, you were like, what the hell did you do?
Yeah, where's your face?
But it made me think about the psychological impact that masks had on babies during that time and all of this younger generation. Because if a baby can react that way to their father shaving just the lower half of his face and going, "Oh, I don't recognize you." Like, what is covering it up, and removing that expression
That's
altogether?
half of the information of your
Yeah.
face. That's just
Yeah.
gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could watch. I haven't actually seen this yet. These were all the jokes that she was going to say on CNN. Let's see.
New Year's Eve in Times Square. You guys have to stop talking about balls dropping, or else the producers on Nickelodeon shows are going to tune out, and we need all the viewers that we can get on CNN. Shania Twain is on the broadcast tonight. Reminds me of this year's Paris Olympics theme. Man, I feel like a woman. This year, people had to go to extreme measures to deal with a tough economy. Mobs of people raided and robbed department stores, and groceries got so expensive, I had to thaw my frozen eggs to make an omelet. It was a pretty insane year. A year where 2 people got stuck in space, and I'm not talking about the Trump-Biden debate. In 2024, we had such a brat summer. Even Trump got his ear pierced. In 2024, the media continued to ignore the Maui wildfires. Maui's been mentioned so little, I had to ask myself, could a fire be on an Epstein client list? Ellen moved to England because Trump won. She calls her employees the C word so much that she moved to a place where it's a term of endearment. Smart gal. We were so mentally ill in 2024. Our bright spot was seeing a baby pygmy hippo being abused at a zoo. Dude, justice for Mudang, the Shirley Temple of the animal world. People got in fistfights over Stanley Cups in 2024. People got in fights on planes, except the Boeing whistleblower who lost a fight about planes.
Okay.
If you want to hear more, check out the vaccine requirements and mask mandates.
Yeah.